I'm Shireen with Olive Street Designs, and I'm going to teach you how to build a base. I've got a long dresser, a high boy, and 2 nightstands. These have been customized and my client wants a base, so I headed to Lowe's, and I am picking out Poplar for these because they're going to be stained dark. I looked through all the boards just to make sure I get everything straight. I have 1x3s and 2x2s for the legs. Next, you want to make sure you get precise measurements. Measure the width of your legs. 2x2s are not 2 inches, they're actually 1.5 inches, because these are your calculations for how long to cut that long center board. So I've done all the math, I've measured everything, and then I've told on my list how many of each length I need. So I measure it, make some cuts. I'll do the long boards first, just to make sure I get all of that out of these long sticks of wood. And then I'm going to clamp a board up against my saw just to make a gate. And I have 16 feet that I need to make, and I want them all the exact same length because I don't want any of my feet to be longer than the others or shorter, because then my dress won't be sturdy. So with that board there, I just make a cut, move the next one in place, and make a cut, and then I just keep doing that 16 times. Rinse and repeat. This makes it so you don't have to measure each one because there is a margin of error with that. And then here we go. Look how straight those are. I have 16 feet that are all the same length. Now with my cuts, I named all of these, or I numbered them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I can then put the measurements or that corresponding number on the board, and I don't have to keep measuring or trying to figure out what's what. So now I have all my cuts made, and I'm going to go through this selection process of figuring out which side of the board I want to face outward. And on the board, or the side of the board that I want facing inward, I'm now going to make my marks that show all of the pocket holes that I'm making, because then when I get to this part, I don't have to think about it. This is going to be just a factory of throw the board in, pocket hole, pocket hole, pocket hole, and I don't want to have to keep thinking about, okay, now which way is this board going to go and how many pocket holes do I need? I've done all of that. So this is a pocket hole jig that actually kind of clamps that board into place. I can make my pocket hole, and it's a great thing to have. So this is a little bit of an investment. There are pocket hole jigs that are certainly very inexpensive that will do single holes at a time. This was well worth it. But now I have all of my pocket holes down the length of the board. I do 2 on each end and then several down the span of the board. This usually comes with a kit for pocket holes. That's how you're going to put the screws in. I'm using 1.25 peg screws. I've got my list so I can figure out which boards are going to make this particular base. I'm going to start with the nightstand bases. So I go through, make sure I've got all the boards that go with this nightstand, all the legs. And then this is really the best time to go in and do all the sanding. Never again will this be in flat pieces, so go ahead and get everything sanded, because when you start putting this together, you don't want any rough spots or either just frayed edges from making the cuts, because that will affect how your base fits together, and you want it to be nice and tight, no gaps. So get everything all sanded. And now I kind of dry fit everything. So I set it up, and I have the feet. Because the feet have different grains in them too. So I figure out which grain do I want on the very front. And then I also am making sure all my pocket holes are facing the same direction. And I want them all facing down. You just kind of have to think about, okay, now when I put the screws in this is going to go into the dresser. And that's how I want them all facing the same direction. I have a large clamp, so I clamp this all together. I make sure it's just where I want it. Pocket hole screws go in. Again, 2 on each end. And this is going to just be a lot of screwing everything in place. And now I have one leg built, one side. I'll repeat the process. Now I've got two ends and I just need to put that center board in. Thankfully, this clamp is long enough to do all of that. All right, my base is built. This is the first of two for the nightstands. Again, I'm verifying that I have all of the pocket holes going the same direction and everything lines up exactly how I want it. So I'm happy with it. And again, just because I'm about to build a whole bunch of these, I just want to test it, make sure my measurements were good, and everything's good to go. So I'm going to continue on and down the production line, just doing the same thing. Of course, I'm sanding again, and then I'm building the ends. I find it easiest to build the ends and then attach those two ends to the center board. Get everything sanded. This is now the other dresser base. And I didn't film the other nightstand one, but here's all four pieces. And again, my client chose this stain color, and so we're staining a nice dark American walnut. This is a water-based stain that I'm using. I do spray everything down with a little bit of water first to raise that grain to accept the stain and get everything nice and stained. We're doing this dark, so you can see that I'm not wiping this back. I'm wiping a little excess off, but I'm wanting to leave this a dark stain. We're trying to coordinate with some of the furniture that she has. So I let that dry for several hours, and now I'm going in with my top coat. And I do 3 coats of this. Of course, because now this wood has gotten wet from the stain, and now I'm doing top coat, I will sand lightly in between these first couple of coats of top coat, and it will smooth everything out. So after several coats of top coat, I let everything dry really well, and I'm going to start attaching. I always start with this first one here in the middle because things can kind of pivot on the ends, but you just kind of have to figure out what works for you. But for me, attaching the front first and getting that all lined up is where I start. And then I'll move to the side because this is wood, so it bends a little bit. You can see it's not quite lined up, but it will be once I pull that out and then screw it in. You get it nice and lined up. And then put the rest of the screws in. Now that it's all attached, I'm going to stand it up. And there it is. The first base is attached. Just going to repeat this process. This is the high boy, the tall dresser. And I'm having trouble here. You see how there's a gap, and I'm like, why is this bowing? So I took it back off, and then, oh, one of the corner supports is too high. Just that little bit there makes a difference. So I grabbed my Dremel, and it's got the sanding wheel on it, and got that all smoothed down. Perfect. So I put the base back on, and sure enough, it was seated down properly, so I didn't have that bowing anymore. Got everything all screwed in. Now for the long dresser. Just making sure everything fits. And I start with a couple of the screws in the front and get everything fitted. There's a lot of screws on this one. And there it is, all screwed down. And now I'm going to get this standing up again. You'll notice that I'm putting it on a dolly. That elevates it up off the floor so that when I get ready to stand it up, it doesn't put as much pressure on these newly installed legs. And adding a new base, just such a great way to completely change the look of furniture. These didn't have a base, and so they really needed it. And now these are stunning. I hope that helps you learn how to build a base. Follow for more.